Alright, welcome back everybody. Today we're going to look at this beautiful, old, pretty rare book. We can see this beautiful cover here with the red border around the edges, this gold circle with the red cross in the middle, and these gold ornate crosses in the corners. And this is the Rosicrucians, Their Rites and Mysteries, by Hargrave Jennings. And we can see the cross there again, and it contains 316 illustrations published by J.C. Houghton. And the spine is pretty worn there. You can see it's pretty well intact though still, and on the back cover we've got this beautiful red design here with a cross and a circle surrounded by a sort of crown. Alright, so let's take a look on the inside here. So we've got these brown end papers and then the title page. And on this flyleaf here on the left we can see that it's labeled as the first edition. So here's the full title page. This is called The Rosicrucians, Their Rites and Mysteries, with chapters on the ancient fire and serpent worshippers and explanations of the mystic symbols represented in the monuments and talismans of the primeval philosophers. We've got the red cross there again. By Hargrave Jennings, author of The Indian Religions or Results of the Mysterious Buddhism, etc., etc. Unto the very points and pricks here are to be found great mysteries, a quote from Nicholas Flamel, an alchemist who supposedly made the Philosopher's Stone. And then we've got this sort of magical symbol here. It says illustrated by nearly 300 engravings. London, published in 1870 by John Camden Houghton. And then we've got a dedication also to John Camden Houghton. It says, as a mark of respect, I dedicate this book, Hargrave Jennings. And then there's this footnote down here. It says, it is somewhat unusual, I believe, for an author to dedicate a book to his publisher, but the unflagging industry of Mr. Houghton, in his double capacity of author and bookseller, has always surprised me, and as some testimony to this activity and to the fact that he has found or made time to write or edit some 27 different works, I have, without asking his permission, much pleasure in penning the above. So, Hargrave Jennings dedicated this to his publisher. And here's a preface with a little decoration at the top. And we can see this great drop cap at the beginning. It says, this book, which now leaves our hands, concentrates in a small compass the results of very considerable labor, and the diligent study of very many books and languages living and dead. It purports to be a history, for the first time treated seriously in English, of the famous order of the Rose Cross, or of the Rosicrucians. No student of the occult philosophy need, however, fear that we shall not most carefully keep guard, standing sentry, so to speak, over those other and more recondite systems which are connected with our subject. An accomplished author of our own period has remarked that he who deals in the secrets of magic or in the secrets of the human mind is too often looked upon with jealous eyes by the world, which is no great conjurer. And it continues up here. It says, how is it that after centuries of doubt or denial, how happens it, in face of the reason that can make nothing of it, the common sense that rejects, and the science which can demonstrate it as impossible, the supernatural still has hold in the human, not to say in the modern, mind? How happens it that the most terrible fear is the fear of the invisible? This, too, when we are on all hands assured that the visible alone is that which we have to dread. The ordinary reason exhorts us to dismiss our fears. That thing, magic, that superstition, miracle, is now banished wholly from the beliefs of this clear-seeing, educated age. Miracle, we are told, never had a place in the world, only in men's delusions. It is nothing more than a fancy. It never was anything more than a superstition arising from ignorance. What is fear? It is a shrinking from possible harm, either to the body or to that thing which we denominate the mind that is in us. The body shrinks with instinctive nervous alarm, like the sensitive leaf, when its easy, comfortable exercise or sensations are disturbed. Our book, inasmuch as it deals or professes to deal seriously with strange things and with deep mysteries, needs the means of interpretation in the full attention of the reader. Otherwise little will be made, or can come, of it. It is in brief a history of the alchemical philosophers, written with a serious explanatory purpose, and for the first time impartially stated, since the days of James I and Charles I. This is really what the book pretends to be, and nothing more. It should be mentioned that the peculiar views and deductions to be found herein were hinted at for the first time by the same author in the year 1858, when a work entitled Curious Things of the Outside World was produced. So this book, it's supposed to be a history of the Rosicrucians, essentially, or an explanation of all of their mysteries. So I'm just pointing out these little illustrations here, and this is the table of contents. There was another author of the time in the late 1800s named Arthur Waite, who also wrote about the Rosicrucians, and he had a lot of qualms with this book, because as we'll see, it's sort of a hodgepodge of different speculations and theories and kind of connections between all these different things. But it doesn't actually contain a lot of real historical information about the Rosicrucians, or their sort of first coming into the public eye in the 1600s. The author, in sort of making his case that the Rosicrucians are this sort of ancient group, and that they're at the foundation of all of these religions and everything, he doesn't use very scientific methods in presenting that idea, and the pieces of information he presents in here kind of read like sort of disjointed ramblings that are just kind of connecting a bunch of different things without a lot of evidence for their connection, and then just sort of asserting it as true. So keep that in mind when reading this, if you decide to read it. And also it would be worth reading Arthur Waite's book, which is called The Real History of the Rosicrucians. That being said, it's still fun to look through this book and see all of the strange ideas and weird connections that the author makes, even though they aren't scientific and may not have a lot of evidence to support them. So we're getting towards the end of the table of contents here. There's a little illustration of an Egyptian head there. And we've got the first chapter. So the Rosicrucians, and it's got this illustration showing the badge of the Grand Master of the Templars. And those illustrations are sort of sprinkled throughout. Sometimes they're related to the text, and sometimes they're just there as decorations. So we've got another one here of an obelisk. One of the nails of the Passion, it says. And then here we've got the second chapter. It's got a crux ansata at the top. This one is describing a singular adventure in Staffordshire. And then this is an example of one where the illustration is just kind of randomly dropped in. And that illustration is actually repeated later, I believe. Here it's got the mark of the triune. It is a constant and very plausible charge offered by the general world against the possession of the power of gold-making as claimed by the alchemists, who are a practical branch of the Rosicrucians, that if such supposed power were in their hands, they would infallibly use it, and that quickly enough, for the acquisition of riches and power, say they, is the desire of all men. But this idea proceeds upon an ignorance of the character and inclinations of real philosophers, and results from an inveterate prejudice relative to them. Before we judge of these, let us acquire a knowledge of the natural inclinations of very deeply learned men. Philosophers, when they have attained a much knowledge, hold that the ordering of men the following of them about by subservient people, and the continual glitter about them of the fine things of this world, are, after all, but of mean and melancholy account, because life is so brief, and this accidental preeminence is very transitory. Splendor, show, and bowing little delight the raised and abstract mind. That circuit formed by the owning of money and riches is circumscribed by the possessor's own ken. What is outside of this sight may just as well be enjoyed by another person as by the owner, since all is the thinking. Only granting that a man has sufficient for his daily wants, letting the morrow indeed take thought for itself. One dinner a day, one bed for one night, in the alternations of sun and darkness, one of everything that is agreeable to or is desirable for man, is sufficient for any one man. A man's troubles are increased by the multiplication even of his enjoyments, because he is then beset with anxiety as to their repetition or maintenance. Reduction and not multiplication is his policy, because thinking of it is all that can affect him about anything in this world. So trying to make an argument there that sufficiently intelligent people don't care about riches. Also, apologies for the sexist language there, of just referring to every wise person as a man. Okay, and then here's another Egyptian crux. Here's Vesica Pisces. Here's a section for the mythic history of the fleur-de-lis. And then here we've got an explanation of certain Hebrew letters. I'm just sort of jumping through to take a look at the different sections here. So this is a standard of Constantine, ideas of the Rosicrucians to the character of fire. Spark surrenders out of the world when it disappears to us in the universal ocean of invisible fire, that is, its disappearance. It quits us in the supposed light, but to it, really darkness, as fire born the last level of all, to reappear in the true light, which is, to us, darkness. This is hard to understand, but as the real is the direct contrary of the apparent, so that which shows as light to us is darkness in the supernatural, and that which is light to the supernatural is darkness to us, matter being darkness and soul light. So, interesting sort of metaphysical ideas there. And here's an example of a rose window from a cathedral. And then this is from the vaults of the Temple of Solomon at Jerusalem, monuments raised to fire worship in all countries. We think that we shall be able fully, in our succeeding chapters, to place beyond contradiction an extraordinary discovery. It is that the whole round of disputed emblems which so puzzle antiquaries, and which are found in all countries, point to the belief in fire as the first principle. We seek to show that the fire worship was the very earliest from the immemorial times, that it was the foundation religion, that the attestation to it is preserved in monuments scattered all over the globe, that the rites and usages of all creeds, down even to our own day, and in everyday use about us, bear reference to it, that problems and puzzles in religion which cannot be otherwise explained stand clear and evident when regarded in this new light, that in all the Christian varieties of belief, as truly as in Buddhism, in Mohammedanism, in heathenism of all kinds, whether Eastern or Western or Northern or Southern, this mystery of fire stands ever general, recurring and conspicuous, and that in being so beyond all measure old, and so beyond all modern or any idea of it general, as universal in fact as man himself and the thoughts of man, and as being that beyond which in science and in natural philosophy we cannot further go, it must carry truth with it, however difficult to comprehend and however unsuspected. That is, as really being the manifestation and spirit of God. That was a long sentence. Wow. And that's kind of how this author tends to write, with these sort of very stream of consciousness sentences. Here's a little Egyptian scarab. And then trigonometrical effect of the Great Pyramid. This is a section about druidical stones and their worship. The monolith, talisman, mysterious pillar, or stone memorial raised in attestation of the fire tradition and occupying the principal square or place, forum, or middlemost or naval point of the city in ancient times, is the original of our British market crosses. The cromlech or billathon or trilithon, the single, double, or group stones found in remote places, in Cornwall and Wales, in various counties in England, in by-spots in Scotland, in the Scottish Isles, in the Isle of Man, and in Ireland. All these stones of memorial, older than history, speak the secret faith of the ancient peoples. Stonehenge, with its inner and outer circles of stones enclosing the central mythic object or altar, all the Druidic or Celtic remains, stones on the tops of mountains, altar tables in the valley, the center measuring or obelisk stones in marketplaces or center spaces in great towns, from which the highways radiated spaced in mileage, to distance that time-honored relic, London Stone, still extant in Cannon Street, London, the Scottish sacred stone with its famous oracular gifts, vulgarly called Jacob's Pillow, transported to England by the dominant Edward I and preserved in the seat of the coronation chair in Westminster Abbey, even the placing of upright stones as tombstones, which is generally accepted as a mere means of personal record, for, be it remembered, the ancients placed tablets against their walls by way of funeral register, all followed the same rule. We consider all these as variations of the upright commemorative pillar. Wow, another very long sentence there. Here's a winged human-headed lion from the Nineveh sculptures. And then a black sculptured obelisk from the British Museum. Another little illustration there. Then a star up here. And then here we have an image of a druidical circle at Darab in Arabia. Here's an interesting illustration. Another one down here of an Egyptian deified figure. Here's sort of an analysis of these different cross-like symbols. The Round Towers of Ireland is what this chapter's called. It is astonishing how much of the Egyptian and the Indian symbolism of very early ages passed into the usages of Christian times. Thus, the high cap and the hooked staff of the god became the bishop's mitre and crosier. The term nun is purely Egyptian and bore its present meaning. The erect oval, symbol of the female principle of nature, became the vesica Pisces, and a frame for divine things, the crux ansata testifying the union of the male and female principle in the most obvious manner, and denoting fecundity and abundance as born in the god's hand, is transformed by a simple inversion into the orb surmounted by the cross, and the ensign of royalty, refer to the Gnostics and their remains. Here's another illustration of a tower, Brixworth Church. And this is a section about sort of the divisions of light, prismatic investiture of the microcosm. We can see the 7 different colors of light there. So this book gets really metaphysical, but doesn't really go in depth into a lot of topics. It just sort of presents all of these sort of scattered ideas, and then loosely relates them to Rosicrucianism. So here's a section for the mystic Christian figures and talismans. Moorish arch there, and then another rose window. I think that's just another one that we saw earlier. And it says, our engraving borrows from the west front of Leon Cathedral, France, a Catherine wheel or rose window. The 12 pillars or radii are the signs of the zodiac, and are issuant of the glorified center or opening rose, the sun, or beginning of all things. King Arthur's round table displays the crucified rose in its center. And here's a sort of table of different heraldic things. It's a heraldic chart. And then that continues on that page as well. Here's the 20th chapter, the Rosy Cross in Indian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and medieval monuments. And then here's an interesting image that's showing the genealogy of the fleur-de-lis apotheosis of the symbol. So it's kind of showing how it develops out of this symbol of a bee over time. Or it's sort of making this theory that that's how it developed. Myth of the scorpion or the snake and its many disguises. And then I'm just going to show you, these are a few pages that have more figures on them. So we've got a pyramid, some Egyptian kings there. Got Stonehenge over on the right on this one. Druidical stones in Persia, Druidical circle again there. And here we've got Kit's Cotty House in Kent, some ancient British coins, St. Michael's Mount here. Again, and then this is the section, I think that's about towers, which is why we have all these images of these towers and obelisks. We can see more on the next pages here. Propylon and Thebes. Some round towers. We've got some cathedrals here. And it's starting to look at the sort of different features of those cathedrals. And then this page we get into some more esoteric symbols. The phallus and discus. Rosicrucian macrocosmos and microcosmos. And then a checkered board. And then these looks like the tables of Moses. Here's a small Gnostic amulet. Here are some more symbols, mostly architectural elements, and then an analysis of the sort of Chi-Rho symbol, as well as this musical piece here. It says a melody or melodic expression of the portico of the Parthenon. Here are some magical signs. We've got some alchemical signs here and astrological signs. It's the monograms of the planets and astrological symbols of the planets. We've got some, the shield of David. So you can see just how many of these illustrations are scattered throughout here, and also how many times they're repeated. There's quite a few that repeat throughout, and I think are just used as sort of decorations. So at the end, just like so many other old books, we've got advertisements for other books. Here we've got wonderful characters, memoirs, and anecdotes. And we've got this illustration with it as well. And then here's an advertisement for Artemis Ward's lecture at the Egyptian Hall. Here we have Prince Ubili's Bubbles' new storybook. Some more illustrations. Life in London, or the day and night scenes. The best handbook of heraldry, profusely illustrated. Here's a section for illustrated works of humor. We've got Puck on Pegasus here. The standard work on diamonds and precious stones. Hood's Whims and Oddities from 1826. A caricature history of the Georges. This one's for the signboards, their history, with anecdotes of famous taverns and remarkable characters. And this one, it's a Mr. Swinburne's new book, a wonderful literary performance, splendor of style and majestic beauty of diction never surpassed. William Blake, a critical essay, with facsimile paintings colored by hand from the original drawings painted by Blake and his wife. So we can see an image from William Blake there. This one is In Felicia, poems by Ada Isaacs Menken. And here's an interesting one, a slang dictionary, or the vulgar words, street phrases, and fast expressions of high and low society. And then we've got the last page, history of playing cards. And then the final end paper and the back cover. Alright, so that's Rosicrucians, Their Rites and Mysteries by Hargrave Jennings. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm still in the process of trying to set up a Patreon so I can get scans of these books so you can all see them. And if you like the video, feel free to leave a like and a comment and subscribe. Check out the links in the description. And thanks so much for watching. Okay, bye.